Okay, so I know you've like told me you want to hear this story in like video form, and you want to like save the story to listen to later. So I'll do my best to like retell it, even though it's kind of a long story and there's lots of things that it's hard for me to explain. So, as you know, I'm not really a superstitious person, I would say, at all. I'm like the least superstitious person there is. So, um, not necessarily really afraid of the dark, and I like to go exploring when it's dark. And yeah, there's some like scary moments here and there, but most of the time the scary moments come from things that like people, druggies, crackheads, etc. It's I've never really seen anything like super creepy, super paranormal in my entire life, um, except for this one moment. So, yeah, let's just give a little bit of context. So, I used to go to this little school in Connecticut. It's like a little fancy little boarding school. So, like brick, old vibes, all of that. Um, it looks like the school from the boarding school movies. And so, this school had a little path around it. It's like a triangle. So, so, um, and the triangle is around 3 miles long, right? So it's a nice 50-minute walk. It's very scenic, very pretty. Um, Over here it's just like trees, so not really much houses, right? Over here, there were some houses, and there's just one road that ran along this line right here. So let me just mark the road. And somewhere along this road, there's like a little creek that ran, and then it goes like past over here, right? But when I walked, I would like turn up here to go back to school. So that's basically all the context we need. And this entire area, right, is completely empty, because it's like trees and it's like going uphill. So this path like goes uphill. So this entire area here is basically like all trees, and it's uphill. So there's like no houses there. Um, yeah. So, and I know there's no houses there. So it's kind of just like desolate, basically. Even though there are houses like down here, and then if you go a little bit further up, it like levels out up here, and there's houses up here. So, yeah, that's the context. And so my walk was along this like red dashed line here. So this happened around like early November when daylight saving time happened. So what happened was usually I'll go on the walk at like 5 and come back at 6. So it took me like 50 minutes to do the walk, like 50 minutes almost exactly. And at 6 the sun sets. So at 6 it's like pitch black. And if you've lived in New England, you kind of know that the sun sets very quickly in New England because there's so many clouds. It's so like cloudy all the time, right? So at 6 p.m. it's completely pitch black, but usually I get back like 10 minutes before it goes completely black. But on this one particular day, it was daylight savings, so my schedule stayed the same, and I headed out at 5. But 10 minutes after I headed out, the sun already set, so it's like pitch black now on my walk, right? But it's nothing too scary because I walked down this road like maybe like 50 times at this point. Like it's a very common walk that I like to do. So let's just draw the road. So it's like it's like a road here. It's like a decently big road for the area. So it's like the width of the normal road. And there's houses on the right? So it's not like I'm like way far away from civilization. It's houses, but it's kind of strange in that like there's like a big ass driveway into here. So the houses are behind like some trees, right? Like that, kind of like that, right? So you can't directly see the houses, but they're there, and they're like maybe 50 feet back from the highway, so 50 feet, right? And it's not really a highway, but let's just call it a highway. And as the highway is, there's like the tall little like walls that you can't see through, and there's like the shorter fences running around, so it looks something like this, right? So, and this is like things with like the bolts and stuff, right? So it looks like that. And so I was walking here, this way. So the houses are to my right, and there's this little creek running down my left side. But at this point in time, it was so cold that in fact the creek actually froze over on top. And so you can hear the water running underneath, but the actual surface itself was like iced and frozen, right? Yeah, so it's like a frozen creek. And another thing was that there was a little ditch down here, so this was downhill. So there was like a maybe 10 or 20 foot drop into the little ditch, and then the creek was maybe like 30 or 40 feet away. So as I'm walking, it's pitch black, and you know how when you're walking in the dark, your eyes tend to play tricks on you, especially if you've been in the dark for like say over 10 minutes. Um, you kind of see movement where it's not really there. Your eyes are trying to like focus to make out as much detail as you can, right? Um, to make out whatever's in the dark. But since it's struggling so much, you kind of like see things sometimes, but like they're like fleeting, right? So you see it, you kind of glance to your side, just make sure it's nothing there, and then but you know there's gonna be nothing there because you know you're seeing things. So I was walking around this path, and then at this point my eyes are really adjusted to the dark, but it's still pretty dark. So you kind of expect yourself to see like shadows moving in the corner of your eye, but there's just nothing. But so as I'm walking, I kind of cross this area here, right? I kind of cross the tall section into the short section where I can actually like see over down to the creek, to the frozen creek, and I can hear the creek because it was freezing, and you can hear the water running underneath. And then, so I see something in the corner of my eye over here, and I kind of instinctively just like jerk my head to like the left, right, to just look at it, right? I just like turn my head to look at it, and then I kind of immediately snap back, right? Because it's like, oh, you see things out of the corner of your eye, you look, and then there's nothing there, so you just like, oh shoot, you check it out, and then you go back. But when I looked back, I realized that there was actually something there. And so on the other side of the creek, I saw like a man standing, and it was just like a dark silhouette of a man. And at this point, my vision already had adjusted to the dark, so I could make out like the details of like the trees behind him. I can kind of make out the foliage, right? But I can't make out any details on this man. But I'm not looking directly at him, so I'm kind of like looking this way, and he's in my peripheral, but it's like clear enough that I can tell it's a silhouette of a man. And I instinctively felt that I didn't want to look directly at him, because I didn't want whatever this was to see me looking, or to like notice that I was there. And at this point, time just like slowed down, right? So in my head, I'm like, oh shit, somebody's there. But then like the logical part of my head takes over, and it's like, how can somebody be there? It's cold as shit. It's so cold that the little brook, the little creek froze over. Like running water is very frozen. And I'm wearing a puffer jacket, and I'm like struggling out here. But the silhouette was that of like a man not wearing any clothes. Like it was the same slenderness as if like a dude was like naked, covered in like Vanta black. I couldn't make out any details, even though he was in my peripheral. I can make out the trees behind him, like the little pine trees. I can make out like the bushes and the foliage. But I couldn't make out any details on this figure. And I felt that I did not want it to notice that I was there. And like every single hair on my body stood up. But I kind of kept on walking very cautiously. And it felt like I was there for like 10 minutes, but it must have been 30 seconds maximum. I slowed down because when I first saw it, but I just like continue walking like kind of slowly I just knew I didn't want to do anything to get its attention. I'm not really sure I've ever felt like this way before. And so as I walk and now I'm like up here, right? Like maybe like, I don't know, quarter mile later, and now it's time for the turn to go uphill. Um, and I'm kind of too far away to make him out anymore. But as I'm walking there, right, I'm walking so slowly. I'm like minding my step. I'm like looking forward. I'm not even like glancing in his direction anymore, because I already like knew I saw all there was to see, right? There were no details on this thing. So as I'm walking slow, but then I suddenly just like burst out gasping for air. I'm like like hyperventilating. Then I realized like for the past minute when I was walking away from it, I've been like subconsciously holding my breath the entire time, because it just felt so off and so strange. Because in order to get over here in this direction, there's no houses, it's just trees, and it's like uphill, right? Because this place is uphill. So this way it's like uphill, there's pretty dense forest, there's no houses, there's no nothing. But he was standing on the other side of the creek, which means we would have had to hop the fence, go down the ditch, walk across the frozen creek just to end up there. And it's cold and it's dark. And he didn't look like he was wearing any winter clothes. And he looked like if somebody was painted their whole body in black, because I couldn't make out any details, but I could tell it was a silhouette of a person. And in that moment, when I first got away, my head ran through like a million different scenarios trying to explain it, because I believe in science. I don't believe in the supernatural. But then like I came to the conclusion that like whatever I saw, that was real. This wasn't like psychedelics. I wasn't like tripping. I wasn't like high. I wasn't like on drugs or whatever. I was completely sober. And I told myself, I repeated to myself again and again for the rest of the walk home, that whatever you saw, that was real. This is real. This is real. And that's not a person. That's not a person. That's not a person. And then I was just completely lost in my head repeating that for the rest of my walk back. I've never really experienced anything like it. And it's even kind of hard for me to describe what it felt like. Because it didn't feel like, you know, it's evil or like red eyes or like out to get me. It felt like it was just, it didn't have like glowing eyes or like malicious. It didn't feel like it had malicious intent. It just felt taboo for me to look at it. So taboo that I didn't even dare look directly at it. But just me like knowing that that thing was there felt very wrong. Felt like I was looking at something I shouldn't be. Right? And I didn't tell anybody the story for like 2 years because I didn't want people to think I was crazy. But yeah, for sure I saw that, and it wasn't, I saw that thing in the woods. And so afterwards, when I get back to my room, I'm like debriefing. I'm thinking like, what could it be? Was it like, you know, a homeless guy wearing like all black? Was it like some guy like on drugs? You know, like standing in the middle like that? But to me, it just didn't make any sense how he would have got to where he was if he didn't hop over the highway fence, go down the ditch, through the frozen creek. And the creek's like 10 feet wide. It's like, you know, and it's probably not completely frozen over, so he had to somehow waddle through that, and end up on the other side just to stand there. And another thing was that this thing, whatever it was like a statue. Like, it didn't move, right? So you know when it's cold, you instinctively like move your body a little bit more to keep warm, right? Even if you're standing still, you like sway back and forth a little bit. Or like even when you breathe, right? You can see the breathing because it's like harder to breathe when it's so cold outside and the air is so dry. But I didn't see anything like that from this thing. It just stood there. It just stood there. And it's really strange because to this day I still consider myself someone who is not superstitious. I don't consider myself someone who believes in ghosts or like the paranormal, you know? But now that I'm thinking back about it, like I can't explain what I saw. So I feel like, I feel like an atheist who just witnessed a miracle. And he still proclaims he's an atheist because his entire life he only ever witnessed one miracle. But then again, how many miracles can you expect in a lifetime? So I almost feel obligated to believe in the supernatural. But it doesn't make any sense because I've never experienced anything like it before. And I've never experienced anything like it again. And of course the next day I came back like an hour earlier when it was still bright outside. I went to the same spot and of course there was just nothing there. And as the weeks and the months went by, I would begin to take the same walk again. And sometimes even later, even darker, right? Because I was stubborn and I wanted to convince myself that it wasn't real. And in some sense I was right because I never saw it again. I never even saw anything remotely close. It's just like it had been the previous 50 times. There was nothing there. But I still know for sure what I saw on that one walk. And I'm not really sure how to feel about that or what that means. But yeah, that's my ghost story. So